Hey, what's up? Sixth hour. I thought this might be easier to make a video for what we're going to be working on here today and explain to you guys what we're going to be working on here today in class. I've also obviously got it up on Google Classroom on the stream, and then also the work is posted for you to get done. But thought I'd go through some of the stuff with you now so that I can explain it to you better than maybe you just reading what the directions are online. So hopefully everything's going well. I've got to be at home here for the next few days and possibly more, but I'll keep you guys posted on that. So hopefully you guys are getting all the work done. Again, if you guys have any questions or anything like that, please reach out. A lot of you guys have messaged me on Google Classroom, which is great, or you can email me, whatever you need to do to get a hold of me. If you've got questions on things, feel free to do that. But we'll keep kind of plugging away here while I'm at home, and hopefully we can keep things rolling. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, I need you guys to turn into me the What's at Stake article worksheet that we went through, or that you should have been working on. Let's see, that would have been on Tuesday with the subs. So if you guys can turn that in on Google Classroom, that would be perfect. I'll give you a second here to do that. And then we're going to go through that here together. And I think you can see my screen here. So let's go through that assignment. Obviously, you needed to read that article called What's at Stake, and it deals with the presidential election coming up. So it talked hopefully some about some of the things that we've been talking about with political parties and voting. And with the election coming up, we came across this article and thought it'd be a good thing for us to go over. So here are the answers that hopefully you came up with, and you can go ahead and check those as we go. Once again, I would fill them in if you can, or make some changes if you can, just in case you were to come across a quiz sometime that you could use your work on, that you've worked on, some open note type quiz. So here we go. Number one says, what are the two major issues facing our nation right now? And according to the article, the two major issues right now, and you could argue that there are more, but the article talked about, one, the worst economic depression since the Great Depression. So our economy has really been struggling because of the pandemic that's been going on, or that's a large reason why our economy has been struggling, as well as the massive social protest movement. And a lot of that has been some of the stuff with the police and issues like that, if you've been following the news at all. So those are two huge major issues that are facing our nation right now. Number two, who are the two candidates running for president, and what political parties do they represent? Hopefully you're able to do this maybe off the top of your head, because we've talked about it so much. But obviously the article talks about Donald Trump, who's the Republican candidate, and what we call the incumbent. That's someone that is like holding the political office now and they're running for re-election. They're called the incumbent, and that would be Mr. Trump. And then Joe Biden is running as the Democrat. And like I said, there are actually a lot of people running for president right now. If you look at the ballot, which I'll talk about here maybe in a little bit, if you look at a ballot, there are like 6 or 7 different people running for president. Just the two major ones are Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden. Number 3, in an effort to boost our economy, what has President Trump done throughout his presidency and lately? He has overseen massive rollback of environmental and other government regulations, which means he has kind of taken away some regulations or rules that might kind of hold businesses back from being able to do certain things. And some presidents and sometimes Congress writes rules and laws that do that. And when we say roll back, like he took those away, which allows sometimes for businesses and restaurants or whatever, or like a Gentex across the street, to go ahead and do some things with less rules, which isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes that lets them produce more stuff because there aren't as many rules on them. So he's done some of that, hoping to kind of jumpstart our economy and to create more jobs and stuff like that. Number 4, how many years was former Vice President Biden a U.S. Senator for, and who, oops, I got some spelling errors there. Let me change that while I'm at it. And how many years was he vice president for President blank? So first of all, he was a U.S. Senator from Delaware for 36 years. He was born, actually, he's from Pennsylvania, Scranton, Pennsylvania. In fact, that's the city he was born in. Hey, that's where my favorite show, The Office, takes place, in Scranton, Pennsylvania. But he was senator for 36 years. And if you remember that if you're elected to the Senate, you're there for 6 years each term before you have to be reelected. So do the math. 36 years, each term is 6 years. That means he was elected 6 different times to the U.S. Senate. Then, when President Obama was elected back in 2008, he became President Obama's vice president. So he served 8 years for him because they were there twice. They were there for 2 terms, and so President Obama would go in that blank there. So again, Mr. Biden has been in politics for a long time. Number 5, fill in the chart below by putting a check mark in the box you agree with, either what Trump thinks or what Biden thinks. And by reading the article, that article had what Trump thinks and what Biden thinks on all these different issues: the economy, healthcare, race, immigration, environment, and the U.S. role in the world. Like, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to be out around the world helping people out and getting involved in conflicts? Or maybe should we be a little bit more just stay at home, let other people deal with their own type of problems? And so you need to read in those boxes. And I think I've got, actually, here it is right here. Right there, they had Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden and what they think on either side. And you need to put a check in the box on that worksheet here, which one you kind of agreed with more. So again, I don't have that filled out because you guys all think differently, and that's great. So as long as you got that filled out, the one you agree with, perfect. I'll be looking through that to kind of see where you agreed with things, but I won't share that with anybody. And yeah, we'll be all good there. So hopefully you put a little check box in whichever one you agreed with. Number 6. Ooh, sorry, I got these notifications coming up. Number 6. What does Ryan Leonard, a 49-year-old real estate broker from Michigan, have to say about President Trump? And he would say, he was quoted as saying in the article, he's the best president we've ever had. So you see a lot of people in our country who really support President Trump, and they felt he's done a really, really good job. Then number 7 moves on kind of the other side. What do Democrats have to say about President Trump? And they said, at least in the article, he's the most dangerous president in the nation's history, and the need to win in November is dire. Dire meaning like desperate. They feel it's desperation time for them to defeat President Trump. So again, we see 2 totally different sides of things in the United States. We've got a lot of people that support President Trump and a lot of people that don't and think Joe Biden needs to be our next president. Number 8. Why are some Democrats lukewarm in their support of Biden? If you know what lukewarm means, kind of like not terribly excited about something or not overly excited about it. And the reason is that he isn't known for inspiring his supporters with stirring speeches or bold visions of the future. If you ever watch him in the debates or you see him on commercials, he's not necessarily a fiery rah-rah type of guy to really fire people up. And so some of the Democrats aren't necessarily in huge support of him because of that. Some people like someone that's going to kind of fire him up and show a ton of energy and stuff like that. And keep in mind, that's not really his personality. And also a lot of people are saying, well, he's not like that because he's too old. Well, if he were to be elected, he'd be the oldest president ever elected in our country's history. I think he'd be 78 years old by the time he would take office. Number 9, why is this election or campaign season very different from any other from the past? The article said, because the stay-at-home orders due to the pandemic have interrupted the day-to-day work of the campaigns, and that Trump was forced to suspend many of his large political rallies because of it. So a lot of times during this campaign season, you see big time campaign events and rallies and stuff like that where they pack large arenas or they have huge outdoor gatherings, and that hasn't necessarily been allowed to happen in a lot of places because of the pandemic. To the extent where Mr. Biden actually spent like a couple months basically holed up in his house in Delaware because he didn't feel comfortable being out doing campaign rallies, possibly exposing people to COVID. Number 10, what will the public judge President Trump on? And the article said that they would judge him on the state of the economy. So how has the economy been doing? And his leadership during a public health emergency and a nationwide movement for racial justice. So kind of all that stuff that's been going on lately in the news with the economy, the pandemic, and then also sort of some of this racial injustice type of stuff that's been in the news a lot. That's how the people are going to judge him a lot on whether they're going to vote for him or not, whether they think he's done a good job in those areas and situations or not. Those are kind of the three main things that he's being judged on as people start to go to vote. Then, using the electoral map, this is number 11, lists the 5 states worth the most points and the 5 states worth the least amount of points. And remember, when we've looked at that electoral college, like the way that we elect our president, remember, like it's almost like each state has its own election. So we've almost got 50 separate elections across the country, and each state is worth a certain amount of points. So again, you needed to look at this map, and hopefully you could see it okay, or the points that it was worth in the article. And it listed there on there how many points each state was worth. And it asks here to list the 5 states that were worth or that will be worth the most amount of points and the 5 states that will be worth the least amount of points. Again, how are those points added up? We've talked about that a little bit. It's the amount of senators you have, and every state has 2. And then the amount of representatives you have that go to the House of Representatives. And those numbers are based on your population in your state. So like the state of Michigan, we're worth 16 points this election because we have 14 people that from our state go to the House of Representatives. And then we've got 2 people as senators. And so 2 plus 14 is 16. And if you looked at that map and looked at the 5 highest points, California is the highest easily at 55. Texas is next at 38. Florida and New York are both at 29, so that gets us to 4, and then you needed to list the top 5. So if you chose Pennsylvania or Illinois, those would be the next 2 at, they're both worth 20 points. So again, actually 16 points where Michigan's at. That's quite a few points. Michigan's worth a decent amount. Then the 5 least, these were all worth 3. There were a ton of states worth 3, which means their populations are pretty small. Alaska, Vermont, Delaware, Washington, D.C., North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana. They're all worth 3. You might say, well, Washington, D.C. is not a state. You're right. But they are worth points to this. So actually, there are like 51 small little elections across the country on November 3. So you need to list 5 of those. Then give a short description of all of the following. And these were sort of, I guess we call like buzzwords or things that you hear a lot around election time. And these were all listed at the end of the article where it said election lingo. These were all in there. And I just wanted you to kind of look at what those were, look at the paragraph or 2 that explained what those were, and then fill it out here. So I'll go through briefly kind of what you should have had in there. Attack negative ads. They're ads that tell you why not to vote for the other candidate. So maybe not saying like, hi, I'm Joe Biden, or hi, I'm Donald Trump, and here's what I would do as president, or here's why you should vote for me. There are more ads that are like, hi, I'm Donald Trump, or hi, I'm Joe Biden, and here's why you shouldn't vote for the other guy, because they're nasty, they're mean, they've got a bad history, or whatever. So they're negative. They're trying to attack kind of the other candidate and show why you shouldn't vote for them, as opposed to an ad that says you should vote for me. And it can get kind of nasty with some personal type attacks. Battleground states, but also known as swing states, because they have large amount of undecided or independent voters, like people that aren't necessarily a Republican or a Democrat. And some years that state votes for Democrats, other years they vote for Republicans. Those are what we call the battleground states. And Michigan actually is oftentimes a battleground state, and we are this year. President Trump won Michigan in the last election in 2016. Prior to that, Barack Obama, a Democrat, had won Michigan two elections in a row. So we kind of swing back and forth. Conservatives and liberals, we've talked about this a little bit in our notes. Conservatives are usually on that political spectrum, kind of on the right, and they're usually Republicans, not always, but they usually are, who think that the government should just be like small. They should play a limited role in our lives, as opposed to liberals, who would say are on the left, left liberal, left liberal, left liberal. That's usually Democrats, not always, but usually Democrats would be considered liberals, who think the government should play a more active or bigger role in our lives. And that's really the big key difference between Democrats and Republicans, or liberals and conservatives. Conservatives, Republicans want small government, limited role in our lives, as opposed to liberals, or who tend to be Democrats. They want the government to be much more involved in our lives and help us out more on a day-to-day basis, right, wrong, or otherwise. The electoral vote, as we've talked about, the electoral college, that's our system that we vote for, or that we partake in for our presidential election. That's where each state is worth a certain amount of points or electoral votes, and the winner in each state wins all the points. So in the state of Michigan, like we've said, we're worth 16 points. If Biden wins even by one vote in the state of Michigan, he gets all 16 points. If Trump wins by even one vote, you don't get a slap on the back or a reward for finishing a close second. You get nothing. The winner take all is what we call that. Super PACs, a PAC, a PAC, is a political action committee, and that a super PAC is a private group that can support a candidate and spend as much money as they want to do that. So we're talking some of these super PACs spend like millions and millions and millions of dollars to support either Biden or Trump or another political candidate. And there are actually rules and laws about how much money that certain people or companies can give to a certain candidate to use for their campaigns. Super PACs are allowed to use as much money as they want. And it's been a real controversial issue in the past maybe 15 to 20 years, these super PACs. And we can talk about that more. But these are big groups, again, big organizations that are private. We call them private groups because they're not allowed to communicate with the candidate that they're supporting or the campaign that they're supporting. They have to do it all on their own, but they can use as much money as they want. So again, we're talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they can be very influential, especially in a presidential election. Mudslinging. Negative and oftentimes nasty attacks from one candidate or campaign to another. So a little bit like the attack ads or those negative ads. But if you think about when you sling mud and it hits, like it stings, it hurts. You're not doing it to be nice. And so that's what we say mudslinging. If you hear there's a lot of mudslinging going on between the two candidates, it means they're calling each other bad names. They're trying to show people that the other person's bad. And oftentimes, again, these can get pretty nasty. A populist is a politician that, oh boy, I got to do better here, that claims to appeal to or represent the common American. So not necessarily the really rich or the poor, but that kind of common day, everyday person. That's a populist candidate, someone who says, hey, I'm going to represent you, the middle class, usually more of the working class type of person. Red and blue states. Red, Republican, red, Republican, red, Republican, red, Republican. And those are states that usually consistently on a year-to-year or election-to-election basis vote for that party or vote for the Republican Party. Those are states that we call red states. The blue states would be states that consistently vote for the Democratic Party. So if you can remember red, Republican, then you obviously know that blue then represents the Democrats. Sound bites, those are like quick, catchy, snappy comments that politicians use to sum up their position on particular issues that they can quick throw out there in the middle of a campaign, or quick put on a Twitter ad or a TV ad. We call those sound bites, like short little snippets. that we can hear. Spin. That's when a campaign tries to spin or kind of change the meaning of a comment made by a candidate, to make it sound either for their own candidate, to make it sound better, or maybe to take something, a quick little sound bite that a opposing candidate said and spin it and make it sound bad, when really, if you watch like a whole interview, they meant a good thing by whatever they said, but they'll take like a 30-second piece or even less than that, maybe one sentence from a whole interview, and say, look, this person said that, and that's such a bad thing. When in reality, if you watch the whole interview or you watch the whole comment by a politician, they might have actually been saying something good. So I got to be careful with what you see on these quick 30-second commercials. If the opposing candidate's putting something on there, and because you don't really know what the whole interview said or the whole speech was, you just hear that quick little sound bite that might have been spun to make it sound negative when really it might have been positive. To vote by mail. The ability that some states give to their citizens to vote by sending in their ballots through the mail instead of going to the polling stations. And this has become huge this year because of the pandemic. A lot of people don't want to go and actually cast a vote because they don't want to go and be in close proximity with other people. And so a lot of states actually offer this, that you can take a ballot, or you can request a ballot. They'll send it to your house. You fill it out and you can either mail it back in, which would be voting by mail, or they also give you an option that they have like these voting boxes set up around certain counties or cities or whatever, and you can go then drop off your mail-in ballot there. And actually, I'm doing this video right now because my wife is doing that right now. She took a walk with our boys to get them out of the house a little bit. Oh, here they come in the background. So if you hear anything, hear them shouting, sorry. To put her vote by mail ballot into that box downtown Zeeland. So that's vote by mail. And hey, I have her ballot actually, and I took some pictures of it. So I'm going to show you guys what that ballot looks like so you can see. Hey, buddy. See, I just told you my kids just got home from kind of voting by mail, and they actually helped my wife fill out the ballot. So they saw what that looks like. You want to say hi, Peyton? It's my class. I guess not. Youth vote. Youth, in terms of voting, that's the 18 to 29-year-olds that can vote. Obviously, 18 being the youngest that can vote. And oftentimes this group of people hasn't voted very much. They don't really get involved in voting for whatever reasons, numerous different reasons that we can talk about later. As it said in the article, only 43% of eligible youth voters voted in the last election. And youth voters, as we looked at like who is a Democrat and who's a Republican, or who they tend to vote for, oftentimes that group, that 18 to 20-year-old group, tends to vote for Democrats. And as people get older, they tend to start to lean the other way and vote more conservatively or with the Republicans. But that group, 18 to 29-year-old people, like I said, tend to vote as liberals or for Democratic candidates. And a lot of people would argue that was a big reason why Hillary Clinton, the Democrat in 2016, lost, because only 43% of that big group of people voted. And so she didn't get a lot of the votes that typically would have gone to a Democrat. And that's why you're seeing this year a lot of push just to get people out and vote. And there's a lot of push from the Democrats, as you'll see, to get that group of people to get out and vote. People 18 to 29 years old, because they feel like if they can get a high percentage, or at least a much higher percentage than 43%, to get out and vote, that they'll get a lot of those votes. And that would then probably benefit Mr. Biden and his presidential candidate, Mrs. Harris. And then lastly, swing voters was the last vocab word there. And that's voters that are not loyal to either political party and could support either candidate or party based on their views on the candidates and issues. So those are kind of those independent voters. Sometimes they vote for Republicans, sometimes they vote for Democrats. And that's actually the group of people that Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump are trying to swing in their direction. Because we've got a lot of people in our country that always vote for Republicans. And so Mr. Trump's not going to waste his time on those people. He knows they're going to vote for him. I mean, he'll still go and campaign and rile them up at rallies and events, and Biden will do the same thing with the Democrats. But really, their main focus is trying to get that middle group of people on that political spectrum that sometimes they'll vote to the right with Republicans, and sometimes they'll vote to the left with Democrats. And that's kind of the key group of people that if they can win over, if they can swing their way, will help them to win the election. Hopefully you're able to pick up some more about just kind of this whole election process and learn more about the candidates through reading that article, and get this filled out and sent in to me. I thought it was really well done, the article, and gave us some good, simple information about kind of what's at stake, as the article says here, or what the article is called, for the election coming up here on November 3. And if you notice, I don't know if you've been watching the news at all, like the election has started already. There have been like over 20 million people that have already voted, either like with absentee ballots or those mail-in ballots that they've turned in. Like a lot of states allow for people to do that early, and a lot of people have been doing that. So more this year than in any other presidential, like way more than any other presidential election in history. So the election has started in a sense. The election, a lot of people say, well, it's on November 3, the election. Well, in a sense, the election ends November 3. It's already started across our country. And Michigan is one of those states that does allow for people to do that ahead of time. Like I said, my wife just went and did that. So it's real. The election's happening tomorrow night while I'm thinking about it, Thursday night. I believe on NBC they're having the last presidential debate between Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump. With some different rules. If any of you have been watching the news, like they're going to, the last presidential debate that we talked about where it was just a mess. They were just kind of interrupting each other and not letting each other speak. Well, this time they're going to have like a mute button basically on their microphones to allow the other guy to talk, at least for the initial 2 minutes for every issue that gets brought up or every question that gets asked. So we might actually get to hear the guys talk without the other one interrupting. So that'll be kind of nice. So again, if you're looking for something to do tomorrow night, I believe it's 9 p.m. on NBC. I shouldn't say tomorrow night. I should say tonight. I'm recording this the day early. So tonight, Thursday night, 9 p.m. NBC. The two presidential candidates will be in their last debate with each other. I would say any questions, but you can't really ask me any questions right now. So that's the What's at Stake article. If you can get that turned into me again, that would be great. And let's keep moving on here. So today, the rest of the hour today, you're going to have two things that you're going to need to accomplish. And they're both kind of on your own, self-paced. So you're going to have to plug in your earphones if you want to, especially for the second one, the second thing that we're going to be working on. The first thing you need to do, it's posted for you. It is called the Political Quiz Show. And what you need to do, and I've got it up here on the screen, is you need to go through here and choose an answer for each one of these questions. So example, the first question says here, generally, do you tend to trust or distrust government's ability to solve problems? If it's trust, then you highlight, circle whatever you got to do to trust. If it's distrust, you highlight, circle it, whatever. But you want to mark your feelings on all these. There aren't any right or wrong answers. It's just how do you feel about all these different issues? And there are quite a few of them on here. Like if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll get down to number 25. That's the last one. Okay, now what this is going to do is we'll add up. There's a way that you can add up your points, and then you will then see on the political spectrum where you fall. And you can see the political spectrum here. And these are all candidates. This is a little bit older. So this is like Bill Clinton. We're talking about like the early 90s when this was put out there. But the same holds true today. So you might not necessarily know who these people are, but you can see over here, like if you finish over here with like a score of 0, you'd be like really, really liberal. You finish around the score of 20, that kind of, you're like in that independent middle area. And if you were to finish with a score of 40, you're going to be really, really conservative. And don't worry about your score. Okay. You don't know how to score this yet. I have this, like the score sheet. There's a way that we'll score this together the next time we're in class together. So what you need to go through is go through this little quiz, answer how you feel about all these questions. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. And then at the end, we'll be able to kind of add up your total next class period. And I'll show you how we do that. We'll go through each question, and there's a certain amount of points awarded for different answers. And then we'll add up how many points you have, and you'll be able to kind of see where you fall on this political spectrum. If you have more questions about that, email me, message me, and you'll be all set. That shouldn't take you too long, but take it seriously. So maybe, yeah, I don't know how long that would take you, but take it fairly seriously. If you don't know, like this, like number 9, there's some people listed there. You can always just Google search who they were or who they are. That might be able to help you out. All right. Next. So after you get that done, then you'll move on to the post that I've got up. It's called You Create the Quiz. You create the quiz. And what you're going to do with that is it's almost like you're the teacher. There are 5, about 8 to 9 minute video clips posted there for you that you're going to need to watch on your own. And for each video clip, like the assignment here says, you will be creating a quiz while watching the 5 short videos posted on Google Classroom. You must create 4 questions with an answer for each of those video segments. So while you're watching those videos, you can stop it and whatever you need to do to then write down. So like the first video is about political ideology. And I've also put the link here for you in case you need to copy and paste that into your web browser to watch the video. But otherwise, the videos are all posted there. Just click on them and watch them. But while you're watching, so that first video on political ideology, you'll then write a question out. And then you'll also need to have the answer for that question there. So in a sense, like you're like being a teacher. You're putting together a quiz for your students from all 5 of those videos. You're going to create 4 questions and with the answers. The second video is on elections basics. The next is on how voters decide, like how do people decide in the United States. The next one is on political parties. And the last one is on party systems. And a lot of this stuff, a lot of the information is going to be fairly familiar to you because we've talked about a lot of this stuff. But going through there, watch those videos again. You have it at your own disposal. You can stop them. You can go back and watch to figure out questions. But as you're going on, again, you need to come up with 4 different questions with the answers for each of those 5 video clips. So there, you're going to need to put your headphones on so that people aren't all watching the video clips and having them come out loud. You're working at your own pace on this, and that's also going to be due the next time we meet, which will be, I believe, next week, Monday. So you need to get that taken care of. Again, if you have any questions on that, please let me know, email me, message me, whatever you need to do. So I'm going to cut you loose. You've got the rest of the class time to work on that. If you get done with this stuff already, turn it into me. I know all you 9th graders have choice reading that you can get done for English class, but get working on something else. Remember, you can have free time. Free as in F-R-E-E. F, find. R, reasonable. E, educational. E, entertainment. All good? All good. Okay.